So as always, I want to do a quick recap of what we spoke about last week, just as a quick memory jog on where we are. And the recap is pretty much last week we had the scene of Jesus walking on water, remember? And we spoke about the leadership qualities of Peter and how Peter was brave enough to say, "Lord, bid that I come out to you on the water." And he took that initial first step. He took that risk. He took that tremendous act of faith, setting the example for the other apostles. And through that faith, Peter was able to do the impossible. He was able to walk on the water with Christ. But now remember also what kind of caused Peter to start to sink. And of course that was anxiety, right? Anxiety and fear of the storm raging around him. And once he paid attention to it and took his eyes off of Jesus, that's when he started to sink into the water. But at that moment, Peter called out, and Jesus was there right to help him. He grabbed him by the arm, pulled him up, and put him back in the boat. And after Jesus and Peter got back in the boat, all the other disciples that did not step out into the water bowed, prostrated themselves before Jesus, and declared that he was the Son of God. So that was last week. It was a remarkable scene, very famous in the gospel narratives. A lot of artwork made on that scene. And today we're entering into something a little bit different. It's not necessarily about Peter and his leadership, but rather it's about this woman that's referred to as the Canaanite woman. And the theme, there's two themes really today. One of them is she's a Canaanite woman, meaning she's not Jewish, right? So she's not necessarily from the fold. So there's the theme of Jesus welcoming her in, pretty much. Welcoming her in and even providing a miracle for this outsider. Kind of foreshadowing what St. Paul would eventually do to being the apostle to the outsiders. Or in other words, the apostle to the Gentiles, as we heard in today's reading. Before we get into that, I kind of want to dive into a few things that kind of can get past us. At the very beginning, it mentions that Jesus entered into a region of Tyre and Sidon. I don't know about you, but before doing some research, I didn't necessarily know what was the significance of that. I wasn't around 2,000 years ago, so I had to do some research into that, and I found out that Tyre and Sidon is actually mentioned quite a bit in the Old Testament. Except it's not necessarily in a positive way, right? Tyre and Sidon were known for their wickedness. And because of that, they were denounced quite a bit by various prophets in the Old Testament. And they were kind of part of this Canaanite territory that even really Sodom and Gomorrah was a part of as well. So it was a rough territory. It's a rough area. So we got that territory is not so great. But then we refer to the woman as the Canaanite woman. So she's a member of that territory. And with the Canaanite woman, likely she practiced the religion of that territory. And that's, I think, what's interesting. Because the religion of that territory was a pagan religion, right? So they worship various gods and goddesses and deities. And, they would worship different idols like Baal and Moloch and Ashta. And this would involve a lot of occult rituals. A lot of fertility rituals and rites, and even sometimes even child sacrifice to this god of Moloch. So it was a dark area, and it was not a good religion, really, quite frankly. And it was kind of akin to witchcraft in a certain sense. And to kind of wrap our heads around it. So here's this Canaanite woman that comes from that area, and she's having a problem. Her daughter is being harassed by demons. And I think we can figure out why her daughter's being harassed by demons. It's because of the things that her mother was taking part in this worship of Baal and Moloch and this witchcraft. And those usually open doors. So the first thing she does is she hears of Jesus, so she calls out to Jesus, and she calls him Lord and Son of David, likely because that's how everybody's referring to him. And Jesus doesn't really respond at first. He doesn't respond to this lady. But then the lady gives him homage. Homage, that same word that was used last week when referring to what the disciples did when Jesus got in the boat. They bowed to Jesus. They laid prostrate before Jesus, treating him as a king. So now this Canaanite woman is giving Jesus homage. It's almost like a conversion is kind of taking place within her. She's not just calling out his name, she's bowing to him. And the woman begins to have a change of heart. And she bows to him and asks for his help, and then Jesus responds and explains to her why he's hesitant. He says, he refers to how God's children, the food of God's children should not be given to the house pets, right, to the dogs. That's not right. Nobody would take, the food out of their child's mouth to give it to their pet. That's just not how it would happen. They're outside of the fold. And it's also important to realize that the Jewish people, the salvation history, was meant to come through the Jews. So Jesus says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel, because that's who Jesus is working salvation through. It will be after salvation has been accomplished that it will go to the rest of the world, and it will open wide to anyone who is willing to come and give Jesus homage, to accept the Christian faith. But first it must come through the Jews. So he explains that to her. And what's her reaction? This is the important part. What's her reaction? Was her reaction to freak out and argue with Jesus and say, it's my right for you to heal my daughter? Or did she yell at him or throw a fit? No, that's not what happened. Instead, she accepted what he said. She acknowledged it. And she said, even the dogs get the scraps of the children. What a tremendously humble thing for this woman to say. What a tremendously humble thing. And it's worth pointing out that she refers to Jesus in this statement as master. This woman was having a conversion. This woman was having a conversion. And Jesus, who can see hearts, we see that all over in the gospel narratives. He sees that she's finally had that conversion. He sees that she's calling him master, and he praises her for it and welcomes her and actually heals her daughter. He praises her. He says, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And the woman's daughter was healed. So what does that mean for us? Well, like I said in the beginning, it foreshadows how the gospel will go out to the Gentiles, to everybody that's not Jewish. But more so, I think it resonates with us that really no one is outside the bounds of God's love. That really everyone is welcome into his fold. That Jesus is always welcoming all to come to him. Doesn't matter their background. Doesn't matter what religion they practiced. It doesn't matter what ancestry they have. It doesn't matter what their nationality is. None of that matters. What matters is that we have an open heart and we accept Christ. We accept Christ, we accept his teaching, and that's the key. That's the key. And that's the message for today. So may we always know that no matter what, no matter who it is, let's never count anybody out. I'm sure there's many of us that have family members or relatives, friends, that maybe we think, oh, he's way too far gone. Or she won't ever be back at church. Or that they've just had such a history that there's no way they can come back. But today's story is for them. Today's story should resonate with them. That this woman, who was basically practicing witchcraft, not only was welcomed and praised for her faith, but she also received a miracle. That's a strong message. That's a strong message that we should never discount anyone. And always remember that everybody is welcome to Christ. So may God bless you.